The discoveries presented here will shock you. There's a scandal going on in the scientific world today involving the suppression of information deliberately held back from public view. It's a scandal that is cheating you of your ancestry and robbing you of many serious benefits. Misinformation is on a scale never witnessed before. Artifacts deliberately dumped in the Atlantic Ocean. Certain discovery sites banned to researchers who ask embarrassing questions. An archaeologist ordered to deny a major find. There's a worldwide conspiracy regarding disinformation that's been going on since the beginning of time, or 6,000 illusory years of it. The conspiracy is about UFOs, aliens, reptilians, religion, super technologies, evolution, and our true past. On the 4th of October 1957, the Soviet Union launched the Sputnik 1 satellite and marked the start of the space race. The world looked on to catch a glimpse of this artificial moon hurtling towards the stars. But then came the most bizarre discovery that was quickly hushed up by the agencies. The discovery of another satellite already in orbit. The question arose, who or what had put it in orbit and how long was it in space for? Former French astronomer Jacques Fabrice Vallée of the Paris Observatory saw it 3 times in 1961 and got 11 data points in 45 seconds. It seemed to be orbiting in reverse at an altitude of over 22,000 miles above the Earth. The name given to this satellite was the Black Knight. NASA's goal was to collect data on a large number of luminosities seen flying over the lunar surface. Operation Moon Blink also investigated large structures which have been photographed by unmanned NASA satellites. Amateur astronomers have videotaped spherical luminosities using celestron telescopes. "40 million miles away, on a small planet called Mars, we find more evidence of artifacts and monuments built on Mars." A Soviet scientist who defected to the West claims that photographs taken by an orbiting satellite clearly shows the ruins of temples that was once a civilization on the Red Planet. The 58-year-old scientist reports that the Soviet satellite was launched for Mars. It reached its destination in 1982, Its sole purpose was to beam photographs and other data back to a manned satellite orbiting Earth. The photographs are computer enhanced and in full color, and there is no mistaking what they revealed. A city the size of Moscow, and it is ringed by wide boulevards, huge temples. Some still support slate gray domes that measure 2 to 4 miles in diameter. The city lies in ruins from aging and quakes. Of course, the Soviet Union would never admit to this incredible discovery because it would reveal too much of their technological progress. Newspapers around the world also reported the belief of 30 US scientists that the 2 photographs sent back from Mars in 1976 by the Viking spacecraft indicate the existence of an ancient civilization. According to ex-CIA Stan Deyo, who was working on the secret government UFO projects, wrote about the hushed-up technology of these flying discs. There are underground bases all around the world, which include off-world bases, that some of these projects have been taking place. Stan also talks about compartmentalization, in which personnel, contractors and suppliers have no idea what the parts they're supplying are used for. No one knows what the other person is doing or working on, and supplies only one piece of the jigsaw puzzle at a time.
This scientist believes that man holds the secret of anti-gravity and can produce flying saucers at will. We interviewed him at a private house in Perth.
Retired airline pilot and author Bruce Cathy has written many books on many subjects, including UFOs and the world energy grid. He has also sighted many UFOs whilst a commercial pilot. One sighting, which includes seeing a huge flying disc coming out of the Pacific Ocean. His books have been suppressed. Another excellent author is Jim Keith, Sources of the Illuminati, who mysteriously died after attending a simple day surgery procedure. On the outskirts of Thing Nhu, near Tibet, lays the ruins of a monument and pyramid, remains of a royal palace containing thrones with sun and moon images. There was also a large milky white stone surrounded by exquisite drawings discovered in 1725. In 1952, a Soviet expedition arrived. The group was shown by Tibetan monks some ancient documents, whose descriptions agreed with the 1725 discovery documents and described the milky white stone was brought from the moon. Could this be possible? Were we ever on the moon? All over the world, there are ancient rock drawings, paintings depicting rocket ships, flying machines, and astronauts. The Epic of Etana from Babylon, 4,700 years ago, supplies us with a very accurate description of the Earth's surface from progressive altitudes, descriptions which were not verified until the high-altitude flights of the 1950s and the first space shots of the 1960s. Ancient written scrolls also describe the moon, including landscapes, craters, and monuments built on the moon. This tiny golden replica of an ancient flying machine is Columbian, over 1,000 years old. It was tested in a wind tunnel. The aerodynamic styling resembles that of a modern aircraft. Right now, there are off-world activities and projects going on, including mining on the moon for helium-3, which is used for nuclear fusion for interstellar space travel. Other projects include the colonization of 5 planets and moons in our solar system. So now you know why so many sightings around the world. They can't hide this technology for much longer. The first moon landings were blotted out to hide the artifacts left behind from our past visits to the moon. Some were even shot in a studio. The later moon landings were also blotted out, but this time to hide the activities from our advanced moon mining operations and colonization projects. UFO sightings are our own. Most of this technology is not alien, but a reconstruct from our past. The powerful, illuminated cabal have used every trick in the book to hide facts and confuse the public into fear and submission, and to stop you from knowing the real agendas of the world. Over 2 million people in the United States alone have been kidnapped and mind-controlled. Some were born into the roles they were given to play in society. Some victims are mind-controlled into thinking they have been abducted by aliens or reptilians. Other victims are used as fronts to head groups like researchers, channelers, New Age gurus, alien contactees, just to name a few of the misleading truthers. There are also government and private trolls setting up blogs and websites to discredit whistleblowers and real, true researchers. These trolls put out hoax photos to discredit real findings and change public opinion. The rest of the population are easily controlled through every type of media, education, politics, and religious movements. This includes third-party opinion makers and so-called truth movements, which deliberately mix 70% facts and 30% lies to confuse and lead the half-awakened public in directions they wish them to follow. This is all child's play for this controlling group who know the secret of reality. The pieces of the jigsaw puzzle must be understood to come together. They're planning something big. In fact, so big it will affect everyone on the planet. But first, we need to look into our past. Our real past. The shocking news is that all cultures began suddenly and fully developed 6,000 years ago. They did not rise to their peak. They were at their peak from the beginning. For the first 3,000 years of man's history, the growth of super technologies came alive. Scientists had unlocked a secret. They had discovered our spinning planet to be a giant generator, its land masses crisscrossed with energy lines. These magnetic currents they had harnessed across the planet was one big gigantic scientific instrument. Along these lines, situated at terrestrial power points, arose temples, pillars, rocking stones, circles, crosses, mounds, pyramids, tunnels and platforms. Traces of these are dotted still around the world. You see them on every continent and even on remote islands. Thus, all over the world, thousands upon thousands of pillars called menhirs arose in symmetrical formation, their purpose to realign Earth magnetism from its natural meandering paths to straight, artificial lines. At each pillar, the electric current of the atmosphere was attracted to combine with the terrestrial current to produce a fusion of power, a secret we have not yet utilized. Interestingly, the standing stones were all rich in quartz, a crystal similar to that used with the cat's whiskers in early radio receivers. Modern experiments have shown that cosmic influences do affect magnetic currents at the Earth's surface, and that at certain seasons, rocks become charged with energy, which they release into the soil, stimulating seed germination and vegetable growth. Green tomatoes, placed within a magnetic field, have been shown to ripen 4 to 6 times faster. Seeds placed in a current grow many times faster. We have the technology to make the soils rich and fertile without chemicals. The energy lines were also harnessed for propulsion and also for transport. The old elite cabal want to hang on to the oil, even though the combustion engine is a 100-year-old technology. Another use of the network was power production and communication. Healing also resulted from this energy system. Millions of taxpayers' money was spent to fence Stonehenge in the UK to keep the public out during the summer solstice, whilst the elite members would participate in a healing and energy ritual. The big pharmaceutical mafia would just love that. Earlier pyramids were not built as tombs significantly. They were part of the worldwide network. For starters, 85 survive in Egypt, at least 4 in France, 1 radioactive, and in Bermuda 1 that is submerged. There are thousands of pyramids worldwide. This implies that a single authority was directing a united world effort, a world order. The city of Babel later to become Babylon, was a political center for world government. By possessing such a global energy center, Babel effectively controlled the world. The egotistic founders of Babylon grew more and more wicked and mad until they thought in their hearts there were some sort of gods themselves. This quote from an ancient scripture. The arrogance of Babel became a scandal. Wars had started at some parts of the world and civil disobedience began. Then came the deluge. The deluge, November the 17th, 3398 BC. That day was probably like most others, temperate, balmy. In one longitude, millions were dining, entertaining, relaxing. Precisely at 8 p.m., the Earth gave an enormous shudder. Prodded by an outside force, the planet tilted on its axis, and amidst lightning and the worst thunder ever heard by man, attended by a screaming hurricane, tidal waves of 6,000 feet swept towards the poles. A blanket of lava and asphyxiating gases extinguished all life. This cataclysm wiped the mother civilization from the face of the earth and consigned its products to a watery grave forever. Not only were the antediluvian people buried, but their technological achievements were destroyed, including all form of machinery and construction. It is quite possible that areas which were most densely populated were submerged by the sea or buried under thousands of feet of debris. It has been scientifically estimated that over 75% of the Earth's surface is sedimentary in nature, extending, as in India, to 60,000 feet deep. The sudden breakup of the totalitarian world government was the catalyst. In the events which followed, most continents and island groups were to become so isolated they would all but forget each other's existence. Evolution. Illuminated lies. All Hollywood movies show early humans as pitiful ape men who devoured big chunks of rotten meat with savage grunts and dragged their women around by the hair. The Paleolithic and the Neolithic have never existed, except in the imagination of prehistorians. It is 100% speculation. Most of us have seen those elaborate charts in books which show geological ages, from the first simple life form to the emergence of man. Millions of years are postulated. You have to admit they look very convincing to the point of being overwhelming. With all due respect, these charts, so painstakingly prepared, cannot be further from the truth. They are largely hypothetical, you see. They assume the theory of evolution to be correct and build on that. They assume that the Earth's strata was deposited in a uniform, steady fashion over a tremendously long period of time. They assume that the uniform action of nature has never been interrupted by catastrophe. This assumption is called uniformitarianism. At school, the orderly evolutionary sequence spanning millions of years was indicated by the rock strata with its ascending fossils. For example, coal beds were laid down 340 million years ago. Dinosaurs ruled from 130 to 65 million years BC, and man appeared just a million or so years ago. Now, I'll tell you something. In most parts of the world, this theoretical sequence never occurs. Remains of marine and land animals are mixed up in every possible sequence. Human relics are found even inside coal beds. And as if that were not tricky enough, these remains of human origin sometimes occur with or beneath the bones of dinosaurs. Can you see what's wrong? The evidence shows they were deposited at the same time, not millions of years apart. The man and the dinosaur died together, you see, and before the coal was formed. The laws of thermodynamics. Evolution is an absolute denial of the second law of thermodynamics. Put simply, evolution and the second law cannot both be true. As for the second law of thermodynamics, it has been confirmed by numerous and varied scientific tests, while evolution is, and always has been, a theoretical model. By no means is evolution universally accepted by scientists, yet it is often mistaken for science. You'll be surprised, for example, how many people have accepted the myth that science has shown there is no creator. Evolution is the kingpin of modern atheism and world communism. Evolution is in trouble no matter how enthusiastically it tries to sell its speculations. Something in nature keeps standing up and saying no. The two great universal principles of thermodynamics, energy conservation and deterioration, bear witness to the scientific necessity of an original creation. We speak of millions of years for terrestrial life only because evolution demands that it be so. It needs the time. In other words, evolution has an answer it likes and is trying to make the questions and the facts fit its answer. The exaggerated time element must be rejected. Modern dating techniques cannot take us back further than about 3000 BC. Dr. W.F. Libby, a foremost authority on modern dating methods, who won the Nobel Prize for his research on carbon dating, was shocked to discover this limitation. He noted, "You read statements in books that such and such society or archaeological site is 20,000 years old. We learned rather abruptly that these numbers, these ancient ages, are not known accurately. In fact, it is about the time of the first dynasty of Egypt that the first historical date of any real certainty has been established." Consider the much acclaimed carbon-14 dating method. This is based on the radioactive decay rate in organic matter. It is a fact that every living thing absorbs cosmic radioactive carbon-14 from the atmosphere. At death, this intake ceases and the radiocarbon in the organism begins to disintegrate. The amount of remaining C14 is used to calculate how long ago the organism died. The accuracy of this dating method has come under some criticism lately. For example, a living mollusk from saltwater can show age dates of 3,000 years, as though it had been dead for 3,000 years. Under normal conditions, radiocarbon dating is reliable to about 4,000 years ago. Then, the disparity runs wild. You see, this dating method depends on the assumption that atmospheric radiation has remained constant. The trouble is, any traumatic environmental change occurring in the past would have accelerated the decay rate, adding to apparent age, if calculated on the assumption of uniformity. Thus, an upheaval like the deluge would play immeasurable havoc upon readings prior to about 3000 BC. It's as simple as that. Let's not underestimate the impact of the deluge. The thing to remember is that this event was a universal catastrophe. It encompassed epic changes, mountains rising and falling, tidal waves rushing faster than the speed of sound, as well as thousands of Krakatoa belching out dust to darken the atmosphere for centuries. Anything that could happen did happen. Seismic and atmospheric distortions persisted for hundreds of years. Regarding a skull found in Kenya, evolutionist Richard Leakey wrote in the June 1973 issue of National Geographic, "Either we toss out this skull, or we toss out our theories of early man. It simply fits no previous models of human beginnings. This skull, quote, leaves in ruins the notion that all early fossils can be arranged in an orderly sequence of evolutionary change." You have to admire the man for his honesty. But haven't there been ape men? Yes, and quite simply, these were degenerates from the main stock, the result of interbreeding from isolation. With such a limited gene pool, the appearance of bad genetic traits increased considerably, producing birth defects and physical mutations. As to physical deformities, Harold G. Coffin of the Geosciences Research Institute in Berrien Springs, Michigan, USA, has a point to make. He refers to, quote, the recent discovery that the classic descriptions of Neanderthal man were based in large part on the skeletal remains of a man suffering from severe osteoarthritis. Researchers Strauss and Cove agree that this arthritic old man has his counterparts in modern man similarly affected with spinal osteoarthritis. He cannot be used to provide us with a reliable picture of a healthy, normal Neanderthal. So, did Stone Age man mine metals? Cavemen wear sophisticated clothing? Did cavemen live in houses? But why only stone tools? The truth is, metal will barely survive when exposed to the weathering processes of large amounts of time. Most objects will decay, rust, scatter, and become unrecognizable in time. Only stone survives. By the same logic, we could say that the 20th century is part of the Stone Age, since people in New Guinea and Borneo still use flint tools. So indeed, you might well ask, was there ever a Stone Age? The answer is no. Have there been stone cultures? Yes. Just as even in today's space age there lives Stone Age tribes on all continents, except Europe. Mankind today is no more intelligent than he was 1,000 years ago, but we have accumulated more technology. We have the accumulated knowledge of the past upon which we can draw and make improvements. While the fossil record presents better developed specimens than those now living, another feature, larger size, has been observed in association. So do you see what we have here? This is a blow to the evolutionary concept. Cope's law presumed that the evolutionary series would show an increase in improvement and size as time went on. Darwin found himself at a loss to explain how now we find mere pygmies compared with the antecedent allied races. Piltdown man. 50 years ago, we were led to believe that this was an ancestor of modern man. It was fraud. These bone fragments were from jaws of an orangutan and the skull of a small child. Nebraska man. An eager evolutionist built a whole imaginary society and lifestyle around a single tooth. When they found the rest of the skull some 2 years later, it was clear it belonged to a pig. Lucy. Lucy is the latest find that has been almost universally accepted as mankind's ancestor. Lucy is an Australopithecus that actually is more like a monkey than man. When its bones were studied using a spectrograph, they were found to match a chimpanzee rather than man. Lucy is a mosaic with bones assembled from different locations. The most human thing about Lucy was her name. Dr. Austin Clark, a leading U.S. government biologist of Smithsonian Institute in Washington, clearly states there is no such thing as a missing link. The effects of the energy lines were also to increase soil fertility and plant growth. Can you begin to imagine what the Earth would have been like in her original splendor? Thriving with the beauty of life, plants were bigger and fruits and vegetables tastier. Animals were much larger in comparison to today. Here's a quote from Dr. Louis Burkhardt. The existence of gigantic human beings in the past must be considered as a scientifically assured fact. On every continent on Earth, we have uncovered not only artifacts, but footprints, skulls, and skeletons of humans. These are well documented. In fact, a fresh look at the fossils led Wiedenreich of Manhattan's American Museum of Natural History to the belief that giganticism and massiveness may have been a general or at least a widespread character of early mankind. You see, the basic characteristics of gravity still elude analysis by modern physics. A number of scientists now believe that electromagnetic energy supersedes the orthodox laws of gravity. There is scientific reason to believe that gigantic size and long life go together. The body cells become lighter. The blood moves more freely. There is less fatigue and the body wears out more slowly. Man was once a higher, superior being, certainly not a species of the monkey family. We are only a shade of the original man. So, what led to this cataclysm only 3,398 years into creation? People were living more lavishly before and possessed technologies far superior to today's technologies. Spirituality on the planet was also much higher. People had a lot of time on their hand, devoting that time to arts and crafts, meditation and lovemaking. It was a time of bliss. The first pyramids and structures around the world were built using levitation and energy beam technologies. Greed, lust and power had formed around the planet possibly in the first 1,000 years. And subsequent generations had more and more knowledge. Especially Kabbalistic occult knowledge was kept by this group who formed the civilized governments around the world, run by a one world government. Civil wars were breaking out around the globe. What followed next would change the world until this very day. The elite cabal of the New World around 3,398 BC tried an experiment using two pyramids, one above ground and the other one below ground, using slabs of crystalline quartz and technologies and rituals not known today, in an attempt to separate themselves from all other life and create their own separate reality outside the original 3D matrix creation. This failed miserably, causing universal mayhem and causing a huge catastrophe on Earth and the surrounding planets. This caused a disturbance in the vapor canopy high above the planet, and the oceans of water it holds soon came crashing down. The volcanic eruptions around the Earth and underground water basins also were released that caused the epic deluge and flood. The remainder of the elite had underground cities, which most of them had survived, including some of the technology and hoarded wealth. Evidence of this can be found all over the world, especially in South America. Some of the elite cabal had escaped to neighboring planets, having the high end of technologies at their disposal. These planets were already colonized, but were affected by the universal deluge caused by this experiment. The largest colony on Mars was also destroyed. Colonies on Venus were also affected. The deluge affected the magnetic fields around the Earth that had changed dramatically. Chromosome breakdowns in all living species caused changes on every scale imaginable, which in turn affected our prolonged life and size. Levels of consciousness and awareness had fallen dramatically. The so-called God gene, called VMAT2, was severely affected. VMAT2 is the DNA gene of our pineal gland. On one level of reality, this gene releases the feel-good chemicals in our body that gives us the feeling of bliss. On another level, The pineal gland is the connection between the silver cord that is attached between the spirit body and the physical body. The spirit body has access to all possible realities, which also connects us to oneness, or as some people like to call it, the God connection. We are all God or oneness, as God or oneness is inside each one of us, experiencing itself, and experiencing not only this 3D reality, but every known realm in the Matrix universe. Millions of people had vanished in the deluge. The survivors left with no technology, scattered all over the world. Great inland seas remained on all continents, often trapped at high levels and not draining back into the ocean for centuries. Hundreds of years later, the elite started coming out from their underground facilities and flying back from their off-world bases. This was a sight for sore eyes, especially for the surviving generations. They would appear to be gods. But something wasn't right. The elite were quite ill and knew they were the last of their generation. This was due to the magnet changes and changes on every level of reality. This was the glitch in the matrix, or the schism. The elite started performing experiments, but to no avail. The only thing they could do was to preserve their bloodlines by interbreeding with themselves and some of the survivors. The generations that followed shrank in size, including all other life forms. Not only were they shrinking, but they were not living long lifespans as they had enjoyed before the deluge. Until that moment, the plan to contain the fast-growing population under one central world authority based at Babel appeared to be working. Then, in one violent stroke, communications were destroyed. In the resultant chaos, the World Alliance collapsed. So now, the world order was gone, but one thing lingered on: the memory of the technology they had once enjoyed. From this wreckage, primitive and agricultural economies emerged. Salvaging little but essentials, the survivors had to concentrate on bare survival. Without technological facilities to repair what remained of the equipment and machinery, they soon fell into disuse. Only the vivid memory survived. Within 400 years, the sudden birth of the supercultures began again. The world arose again like the phoenix from the ashes. But the technologies were not as superior, and plans to build the worldwide energy grid had started again, and within 1,300 years, Babylon was at power again for the second time, but not for long. Around 1700 BC, nuclear warfare had come swiftly and without warning, leaving little time to salvage anything but essentials. Small groups of survivors set out to begin life once more in the jungles and mountains that were untouched by radiation and ruin. Without industry, they were compelled to concentrate on producing their own essentials. In India, 12,600 square miles, Saudi Arabia and Yemen in the jungle areas, reports of ruined buildings with walls like thick slabs of crystal, likewise holes split and corroded by some mysterious force. Walls, furniture, people melted, then crystallized. No natural burning flame or volcanic eruption could have produced a heat intense enough to cause this phenomenon. Only the heat released through atomic energy could have done this damage. Then the world started slipping into the Dark Ages. The few records of technology were kept from the unworthy and guarded zealously by secret societies. The predecessors of ancient Babylon, Egypt, and the Israelite nation was the Kabbalistic knowledge of the elite Kabbal mindset, which knew firsthand how to manipulate matter one molecule at a time. The paradise state had never experienced the illusion, disconnecting them from the all-knowing state of wisdom. This elite mindset knew this and, being not at all concerned with the matter of lying, conjured forth the systems needed to perpetuate this deception. The magicians who received this knowledge and appeared as wise men would eventually, many centuries later, become known as the Hebrews. These Hebrews were the Egyptians of centuries past and ultimately became known as the Israelites. These future Israelites formed a portion of humanity who would be used and manipulated and abused beyond belief by their leader rulers. In turn, the Hebrew nation was used to shed blood and destruction, all in the name of God. Being that the masses of humanity have been imprisoned in a total hypnotic trance state, they would still continue to worship the God of the Jews in spite of this massive bloodletting. The Piri-Reis map, dated 1508, that goes back more than 5,000 years, is so accurate that the Hydrographic Office couldn't believe it at first. But they not only proved the map genuine, it's been used to correct errors in some present-day maps. Greenland is shown free of glaciers, as it was prior to the Ice Age. Also shows the landmass of Queen Maud's land in Antarctica before there was ice. The Sahara Desert shown as a fertile land with large lakes, rivers and cities. Every mountain range in northern Canada and Alaska was recorded on this ancient map, including some ranges which the US Army Map Services did not have on their map. But the US Army has since found them. The ancients possessed a knowledge of cartography comparable to our own. They knew the correct shape and size of the Earth. They used spherical trigonometry in their mathematical measurements. They also utilized ultra-modern methods of projection, exact coordinates. Ancient technologies, computers, X-ray crystals, mercury motors, cloaking technology, vortex mirrors, and Egyptian drills 500 times faster than modern power drills. Precision Mayan surgical instruments were 1,000 times sharper than modern platinum plus blades. Machine-cut optical lenses, screen projectors, Egypt's mysterious moving walls, automatically flashing lights and lamps that shone century after century, non-stop. 716 rhythmically pulsating electric discs, similar to computer discs, found in caves in Bayan Karanula Mountains. Ancient texts reveal the secret of making planes invisible. Luxuries, ancient cruise ships, fashion, levitation, and anti-gravity. Musical crystal skulls. A singing statue. The statue of Memnon and its twin emitted a thin, high-pitched sound like a chord on a harp. It was a phenomenon heard at dawn for about 200 years. The sound at first was said to be sweetly melodious. One theory suggests the complex mechanism hidden in the depths of the statue, activated by the rising sun working on the lens hidden in the figure's lips. Similar sounds were heard at sunrise in the granite cave at Syene, also in the Karnak temple. Evidence is overwhelming about ancient technologies, and it's now starting to surface. This all sounds crazy, but this is the tip of the iceberg. There is so much evidence being withheld from the public, it's criminal. Scientific proof is now surfacing. Get the facts now before they disappear. Vanishing evidence. Consider for a moment the awful possibility that your hometown was forever wiped out. Can you imagine what future generations might find? Has it occurred to you that our noblest buildings today are scarcely more than facades supported by thin tendons of steel? Even with no disaster, our main cities would be little more than rubble in 1,000 years. Our motorways would be crumpled pieces of hardness beneath vegetation. Our once complex railway network would be red dust blowing in the wind. Make no mistake about it. Few house chattels would survive the corrosion of time, and generally paper books cannot last more than a few centuries, hence the need to recopy. Plastics will eventually disintegrate when exposed for long periods outside. The same goes for everything metallic. Yes, that's right. Hair dryers, cars, carpets reduce to dust, along with photographic plates and film. What's more, all iron and steel buildings would rust and crumble to earth. Nothing would be left except a few stone structures downtown and maybe a few statues. Stone is the only indestructible material. It will survive a dead civilization. Isn't it ironic? Nature allows dressed blocks of stone to survive, but not thick iron girders. Probably there would not be one item left in the suburbs to show that they even existed, except for the odd stone axe head. In the event of a total catastrophe, the survivors would be driven to the countryside to live primitively. They might, for a time, be able to salvage and use certain elements of their civilized technology. Eventually, the last machine would break down, and nobody remembering how to repair it. The transistors, toasters, and X-ray machines, although revered, would be useless. To the grandchildren and their descendants, they would become legends. The magic mirror that could see events far away, the metal bird that could fly above the clouds, the room that could move up and down inside big houses. These would become magical myths of a people whose survival instinct would direct them back into the rapidly encroaching forests. Archaeologists 4,000 years later could claim that 20th century man was not yet familiar with iron. If they found cassettes with tapes, these would be a meaningless puzzle to them. Texts speaking of gigantic cities with houses several hundred feet high would be classed as myths. Are you beginning to see the picture? Most physical remains were wiped out. Most ancient records have also been destroyed by the elite bloodlines. The destruction of printed records has been much greater than was originally thought. The Great Library of Alexandria once contained 1 million volumes in which the entire science, philosophy, and mysteries of the ancient world were recorded. In a single act of vandalism, Julius Caesar destroyed 700,000 priceless scrolls. In the 7th century, the Arabs completed the wipeout. Do you know how they did it? They used the books as a fuel supply to heat the city's 400 public baths for 6 months. 500,000 volumes was raised in a 17-day fire by the Romans in 146 BC. The Library of Pergamos in Asia Minor, with 200,000 volumes, likewise perished. The famous collection of Pisistratus in Athens was wiped out in the 6th century, and surprisingly Homer's writings escaped. In the 8th century, Leo Isarus burned 300,000 books in Constantinople. In China, Emperor Tamshi Huangtai issued an edict in 213 BC to destroy innumerable books. Thousands of Druidic scrolls in Autun, France, on philosophy, medicine, astronomy, and other sciences were obliterated by Julius Caesar. Not one survived. Much of the classical literature was systematically destroyed by the Papal Inquisition. Spanish conquerors searched out and destroyed the entire Mayan literature, except for 4 documents now in European museums. It was related that Mayan scholars screamed in agony as they saw their life's purpose go up in flames. Some committed suicide. The Council of Lima in 1583 decreed the burning of the knotted cords, or keepers, on which the Incas had recorded their history and that of their predecessors. What a story of carnage, in which the greatest depositories of knowledge from the ancient world are lost forever yet somehow the Indian books escaped. Did you know that even of the Greek and Roman literature, less than 1% has come down to us? Some authentic and incredibly ancient documents are known to be safely locked away. We may never see them. These forbidden treasures are known to be concealed in 4 places: the catacombs beneath the Potala in Lasala, Tibet; Morocco, where Muslim leaders are fiercely opposed to making them public; a secret place known to a few initiated rabbis believed to be in Spain; and the Vatican. There must be numerous lost cities undiscovered. Still not explored from the ground are immense expanses of the interior of Central and South America, New Guinea, Asia, and Australia. Although Europeans have lived and worked in India for some centuries, building bridges, railways, and modern cities, the jungles have scarcely been investigated. There are remote villages that have never seen a white man. Hidden knowledge. Only 4% of all knowledge in universities are actually made public. 96% is hidden. For 6,000 years, the High Council has collected rare books and kept them hidden in libraries at secret locations all around the world. These libraries are amongst the greatest wonders of the world. Most of humanity doesn't even know they exist. Only high initiates abiding to universal law, sacred geometry, are allowed to access. One such initiate was Nikola Tesla's father, who helped develop some of these ancient technologies. Vaults in the Vatican Library to which even the Pope does not have access. The Vatican is the largest library in history and is the biggest suppressor of secretive information. The Vatican has the highest technically advanced security system in the world, both physical and astral security. Astral security is designed to stop powerful minds from entering using remote viewing projection techniques. Now, if you're not a little curious and concerned at the information presented in Secret Space, Secret Path so far, then you should be. The elite with their underground bases, high UFO activity that's seen worldwide, colonization of planets, secret moon activities, strange experiments, atomic testing and regional wars, hyping a false alien agenda, hyping Noah's flood and religious cleansing, New Age deceit, depopulation of the planet as we speak, dead zones around the planet, HARP-related experiments around the planet, hoarded hidden technology 100 years in advance to what the public is allowed to view, the destruction and looting of libraries around the world, uprisings and economic collapse. The list is endless. Are you not a tad concerned or worried something very strange is going on? We have to ask ourselves this question: is history just about to repeat itself? I urge everyone to watch the holographic disclosure. If you find these series as information overload, then you're not ready, so skip it. But make it your life ambition to directly go and watch parts 6 and 7 whilst they are still available. Even though you will miss out on some mind-blowing information that's sourced at the highest echelon of the pyramid and guaranteed to raise your awareness levels by just watching these videos. Who are we? Where do we come from? What is reality? The power we hold deep inside. The information presented in parts 6 and 7 is so important. It will only divert the coming deluge, but it will change your outlook on the material world. Time for the shackles of ignorance to break away.